Okay, there's a lot that I really, really want to be able to talk about today, but I mean, the biggest issue to me, by a long shot, is this potential war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, they're pretty much like fighting. They're engaged in warfare, but it's unclear if this is going to like turn into a total war. Which historically speaking, total war is a very, very rare state for humanity. This idea that two governments are going to fight each other to the death, and ending in the total defeat of one side that's not something that's happened very much in human history outside of the 20th century, and I guess you would say also the 19th century, but really starting with Napoleon and the French Revolution. Before the French Revolutionary Wars, you really didn't have this whole idea that a country was just going to destroy its neighbor. But when you have this situation over Nagorno-Karabakh, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there's that possibility. I mean, the level of distrust between the two sides, of hatred and bad blood, is it's similar to what happened in Yugoslavia, because a lot of people brush over the war in Nagorno-Karabakh back in the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union, because it was going on at the same time as the Yugoslav wars, which are much further west, so a lot more reporters actually went to cover that. CNN was there every day, so always putting it on TV and saying how bad the Serbs were and how angelic every other faction in that war was. And to be honest, in the United States, most people have no idea what the Yugoslav wars were anyway. So it's a very small group of people in this country who have any knowledge of the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And to be honest, I'm no expert on it. I've never taken any time in particular. I've never set aside much time to study the issue. But I at least know that the conflict exists, that it's been ongoing, that it is one of the results of the collapse of communism. There was a lot of conflicts that were born out of that, and because of that, I feel compelled to try and communicate this to other people who otherwise might not hear it. No matter how small my voice might be here on the internet, I think it's really important that people pay attention to this, because wars are, if there's ever a war going on, that's the biggest issue anywhere. I don't care about Trump's tax returns. That I would like to talk about that a little bit just as a fun thing, but that does not compare to a war, or a potential total war. Now, the reason why I make this distinction between just the skirmishes that we're seeing here in total war is that it's very common throughout human history for two governments, two leaders, two kings, two princes, to fight over some disputed territory and want to take it from each other. And in those cases, the fighting is limited. They're trying to take each other out, and they're trying to grab and hold territory, but they're not trying to destroy one another. But the way that the rhetoric that we're hearing from the two sides in Armenia and Azerbaijan sounds much more existential. People are talking about, like this is a fight for the survival of our nation. We must either defend or reclaim this territory, depending on which side people are on, or else, very bad consequences. This is something which must be done. This is not just, a mere, this is not just a mere disagreement amongst two aristocrats over, who has the right to tax, a certain area. This is the difference between two nation states who have different ethnicities and different religions, saying essentially that their people, their faction, either the Armenian Christians or the Azerbaijani Muslims, are the people who have a right to this territory, that it's a part of their nation, a part of their their organic body. To the point to where they feel like they have their right arm cut off if they don't possess this territory. And it's that kind of rhetoric that leads to total war. That was the kind of rhetoric that we had back in Yugoslavia in the 90s. And of course we saw what the results of that were. you look at Bosnia on a map, it's not a very big place, but there were a lot of people who fought and died to try and take ownership of that piece of land. And the same thing is true with Kosovo. Kosovo is an even smaller piece of territory. It was just one province of Serbia, and there was a big bloody war fought over that too. And so, this could degenerate into a multi-year conflict, which, kills thousands of people. And from what I'm hearing, and again, this isn't too confirmed yet because this is still early on, it seems as though the Turks, now this might be propaganda, who knows? This could be propaganda that's in disinformation, but the rumors going around are that the Turks are supplying Azerbaijan and that they are trying to recruit people from, Turkish-controlled Syria to go over and fight against Armenia in Nagorno-Karabakh in the same way that they recruited people to go fight in Libya against Khalifa Haftar. That this is, that this war is an example of Erdogan trying to flex his foreign policy muscle. That he's essentially using the Azerbaijanis as a proxy, and you would say, well, what does Erdogan have in it? Is there some resource here in this region? I don't think that that's what it is. I don't think that this is pure money and power politics. I think that it is a feather in Erdogan's cap if he is in fact involved in this, and it's not too implausible that he would be. If Azerbaijan knew that they had the backing of a powerful ally like Turkey who could supply them with munitions and potentially even soldiers, then they might be more willing to take on Armenia head on for the first time since was it the 90s, I think, when they ended the war, or was it early 2000s? Either way, it's been a long time that there hasn't been any actual violence. I'm sure if you're there on the ground, it's been tense for a long time. These sorts of wars don't just come out of nowhere, but there hasn't been any actual violence, to my knowledge, in quite some time. And so, if Turkey, in fact, was the ingredient or was the factor which changed this equation to where we went from things equaling nonviolence to equaling violence. If Turkey is what's necessary to make that happen, well then, as long as they have Turkish support, you would think that would mean that this war can carry on. And keep in mind, I believe Azerbaijan is or maybe I'm thinking of Turkmenistan. Now I'm going to make myself look stupid if I'm wrong, but I'm just thinking of this off the top of my head. I believe Azerbaijan is a Shiite Muslim country, which is at least friendly with Iran, and the U.S. is, as of right now, there's been some bubbling tensions between U.S. and Iran that hasn't been getting a lot of play, but the U.S. has evacuated the Green Zone. Which the Green Zone is the part of Baghdad that is permanently occupied by the U.S. military. It's also the part of town where the U.S. embassy is, and the only people left seem to be combat troops. So there is something afoot in Iraq. Rumors are that it might have something to do with the U.S. About to launch some offensive against, the so-called Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, but it makes me nervous to see this sort of under-bubbling tension, with the U.S. at the same time that a Shiite Muslim country like Azerbaijan is taking on Armenia. Makes me think that perhaps the U.S. might want to get involved themselves in backing Armenia. Of course, I don't know that because I'm not in the CIA, I'm not in the Department of Defense. I don't know what these people are planning, but, if they were to do that, we wouldn't find out for another 30 years anyway. I just kind of am having to look at what's going on the ground and read the tea leaves a bit to see where, put myself in their shoes and think, what would I be doing if I were in their position? The U.S. is quite loose with who they consider to be an Iranian proxy. They consider the Houthis to be an Iranian proxy. Why wouldn't they consider Azerbaijan to be an Iranian proxy and therefore justify funding a proxy war against that Iranian proxy as they see it? Because, the U.S. has no strategic interests in Yemen at all, yet they're funding that war there against the so-called Iranian proxies. And they call any Shiite in Iraq an Iranian proxy. So I guess we'll have to just keep an eye out for what's going on here. I really do hope that this calms down quick, but it doesn't seem to be going that way. The Armenians have banned all fighting age males, 18 to 55, which that's a big range, from leaving the country, presumably, so that they can be drafted at some point if need be. So it looks like they're preparing to hunker down. So I will keep following this and see if things escalate. I wouldn't, say that I'm going to be covering this day by day, because there is, other stuff going on in the U.S. But, if things look like they're getting worse or better in this space, I'm going to talk about it, because it is important. And I don't think that, even in an election year, we should lose sight of what really matters. So with that said, if you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.